Welcome to the Unleashed podcast, where we believe that life is better when it is lived on purpose. My name is Molly Brunk, and I'm joined with lead pastor of Be Hope Church, Brad Thompson. And today we have a special guest, Chip Wilson, who is the athletic director at Mount Vernon Nazarene University in Mount Vernon, Ohio. Hi, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Hey, thanks for having me on.
I'm glad that you are here.
Me too.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about just yourself, who you are? We're just excited to have you on today.
Yeah, sure. So Chip Wilson. I'm a 2004 grad of MVNU. Mm-hmm. My wife Katie, she and I just celebrated 20 years of marriage, which is crazy to say, but I have we have a 17-year-old son. His name's Cole. He's going to be a senior in high school, and my daughter Emma is 15. She's going to be a sophomore in high school.
Fun. And how long have you been the athletic director for?
So I just finished out year 5.
Okay.
And it's been a really good experience. Yeah. And I should mention too, we do have a dog at home. So his name is Baxter. Baxter, and he's a joy for our family. So I should mention he's part of the family.
I like that. Make sure he's included. So
right.
He could hear this one day and feel left out.
If my wife sees this, she'll know that I put him in. Yeah.
Oh shoot, I love that. Well, one of the things here at the Unleashed podcast is that we always talk about that we want to live life on purpose, and so like right off the bat, like what is it that you feel like your purpose is, and then we'll jump into a fumble moment because we can't get too far until we talk about a fumble moment. So.
I really feel like since going back even from my earliest days, my earliest memories, I really feel like God has placed me in the world of athletics. And for a long time, I really felt like that was part of the purpose, right? Athletics. And I think it's a part of it. But I think I've learned in the last few years especially, athletics is a platform. It's really a platform. Much people like me growing up that connect with athletics, it's just an avenue for Christ, really.
Yeah.
And so really that's something that I've really realized in the last few years, especially. So when we talk about living on purpose, I really try to see that through the lens of, athletics is a platform for Christ.
Yeah, that's great.
It's so good.
It's so good. Do you have a fun fumble moment?
There are many, I'm sure, if I thought hard enough. I think probably, one of the things that stands out in my mind, and I'm good with it to a certain extent. But I remember when I first stepped in this role. So I was 37 years old when I stepped into this role. I had been coaching at the college level and track and cross country at MVNU, but I remember it was one of our very first events, right? So I'm there as an administrator and at an event. It was a basketball game, and I am talking with some people there, and they were like, "Oh, are you a student here?" And I said, "No, I'm actually the athletic director here." And I was like, "Oh man, so that's why I grew a little bit of a facial hair out there, because I guess without it, I look like a college student."
Wow.
So it's a compliment.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
It's a compliment, Chip.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that.
Before we dive into a few more questions, I do have to clarify, we are not strangers.
No.
No. A lot of people may not know this, but we went to school together.
Yeah. We
roomed together. We had a lot of our own fumble moments together, none of which we'll talk about on this podcast. But Chip, has been a good friend to me, and it was fun going to school with him, and just even in my own life, as we went through some things, being deployed in the military, just him being a support to me and my family, amazing stuff. So
I love that. I love that, Brad. Yeah, I know. Yeah, you, Katie, and you and Janelle. Young relationships in college, kind of seeing that through us is great, man. Yeah.
It's fun to have friends on, not just awesome people who do amazing things in this world. One of the questions we had was, I know when you took over the athletic department, it doesn't look the way it does right now.
Right.
So I want to hear, because this stuff matters to me. How does it look different today than when you first started?
Yeah, well, we offer more athletic teams. We have 21 varsity sports. We have 5 JV teams and 3 club teams. And so the club scene wasn't there. JV scene was kind of just getting started.
Yeah.
Since I came into this role, a lot of it was already in motion. So it really wasn't me, all of my ideas by any means. These things were already put in motion. But our student athlete population has increased, which is a good thing in some ways, right? More opportunities for students. But I will say that there's just a lot of activity on campus that we already had a lot, but there's a whole lot more of activity for students to get involved in, more opportunities for our students, student engagement and things. Yeah.
I know one of the questions I asked you when we were together was like, what does it take to start a new sport? Because we didn't have lacrosse when we went to school.
Right.
Did I say lacrosse?
Yeah.
We didn't have cross country either, right?
We did not have cross country.
Right. These are all new sports. I'm not sure you're just like, hey, we got a new sport today. Like, talk to me about the process. Let me pause and say this. Like we talk about living on purpose. Part of living on purpose is taking the dreams that we have and then seeing them come to reality.
Right.
And I think that's a struggle for most people. And so while they were already set in motion, I think what I'm most interested in, you were able to take a dream and then help that become something that was tangible and real. And so what does that process look like for you? And then we'll try to make an application to people's lives as well.
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely it's a massive undertaking. It's a big team effort. We really look at in terms of athletic teams. We look at Ohio High School. We're right in the center of Ohio. So look at Ohio High School. Like, what are the high school students involved in at the high school level? Yeah. So what could we recruit for? Right.
That's good.
So it's not going to be a sport that we can't recruit for. And so we really looked at a lot of different sports. So we ended, men's lacrosse and cross country and track, men's and women's bowling, competitive cheer, things that are on the rise at the high school level that we're able to recruit for. And we had a lot of help from, we had a kind of a committee, a task force, if you will, that involved some members of Ohio high school administration. We were looking at growing sports, popular, that were gaining momentum. And we brought in some coaches, and we really took our time trying to be very intentional about what we added that we could keep building.
Yeah.
And so those are what you see now is kind of where we landed. You might wonder why we don't have certain sports, because a piece of it then is, are they recruitable, but are they affordable? Do we have the facilities? Do we have the space for this? There's a lot of secondary factors that may come into play.
Yeah.
But
is there still esports?
We do. That was one of the sports we added.
I was like, that was at the tail end.
One of the fastest growing sports. And I will tell you, I am not an expert. I learn a little bit every day about what that all involves. But we have a really good group of students. So young men and young women. I know it's kind of male dominated at this point, but there are some ladies that have gotten involved, and it's been really good. It's been healthy for the culture at MVNU. Yeah.
That's really cool.
So in building those programs, like, what is the big takeaway for you? Like, what's the one thing you learned that was like, oh, this is how we take something that's on paper and then we put it in real life? Like, what's the one thing that you've learned? It's like, oh, this is the most powerful tool that I could use.
I think probably anytime you start something new, one of the things I've learned through this process is it's only as good as the leadership you give it, right? And so finding the right person to lead that individual program. And so we've been very fortunate with the sports that we've added. Those original coaches are still here, right? So 4 or 5 years later down the road, they're just continuing to build, but not just in their ability to build something, but to build it what we would believe in a very, very Christ-minded faith aspect of it as well. And so that's something that has continuing to stick with me. If we're going to start something new, it just needs to have the right leadership.
Yeah.
That's really
from the
good.
get-go.
Yeah, and I think probably the personal application as well is like, we talk about, if you want to lead something well, you have to lead yourself well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So really that continued investment in our coaches, because it does filter down into our student athletes. But I think you lead in how you live, right? And so the way that someone lives their life is how they're going to lead. And so if they're if they have that strong relationship with Christ, and if they have that strong relationship at home, and they're going to lead in that same way with their students as well.
Yeah. And do you feel like the responsibility, do you feel like you're the coach to the coaches so that then they can pour into their players, or where do you feel like you're pouring most of your time and energy into people? Yeah.
So that was something that took a lot of getting used to for me. I was a coach with a lot of the same coaches that we have. They were colleagues of mine. And so transitioning to this role, it did take me some time to get used to that. But that's exactly how it is, right? That it really is my responsibility, to invest in our coaches, to ensure that they are in a good mind space and they're doing well. They have the resources they need, and really focusing on allowing them time in their personal lives as well to grow. And but that took me some time.
Yeah.
You talk about personal time and growth. Like, what are some things that you intentionally do with your coaches that allow them to grow, not just as coaches, but as people, as fathers, mothers, leaders? Like, what do you do for them that helps them grow?
Some simple things is just knowing, I just repeat this, that they know they can take time away. I encourage time away, but also we have we have kids in our office all the time.
Yeah.
I know that's hard to be a dad or a mom coaching a sport, but having your own kids. And so, there's boundaries. Yes, of course there are, but there's a unwritten policy.
Sure.
That you can bring your kids in. You can bring them into practices, and bring them into the office. And, but I think we want to create this family environment where it's not, it's a job, yes, but it's also just the culture, the family is welcome. Yeah.
Yeah. I think in some ways it's probably like church, right. I want my kids to love the church. We want and so part of that is in just being part of it in nearly every aspect. And I would sense that for you guys, kids just seeing their mom and their dads coach and lead gives them a sense of ownership, but also this is fun. This isn't something I hate.
Well, I think too, for our student athletes, they see them as they see them as a coach, but they also see them as, man, that's a dad, that's a mom,
that's good.
Loving on their kids and their spouse. And I think it just creates that dynamic for maybe a future thought for our students as well.
That's really good.
No, that is really good.
Do you have a question?
Sure. How do you, because you work with athletes and especially coming out of high school, some of them are at the top of their game coming out of high school, and it can be a hard, humbling experience when you step into your freshman year. But also some of them maybe have spent their whole lives where they've been told that this is their identity, the sport and their ability is their identity. So how do you coach them through that shift of maybe they're at the end of their time playing sports at Mount Vernon and now they're going off into the real world? So how do you work through that with students?
So I think that's probably one of the most challenging pieces. We have roughly about 400 student athletes on our campus. That's and I would think we have really tried to focus on that more than anything else. The identity that you get, because they've been dribbling the ball, kicking the ball, running, whatever they're doing for, from age 4 or 5 to now 21, 22 years old, and then they leave and it's done, right? And so trying to really coach them throughout, and I think a lot of it is just intentional communication along the way that they're not only getting from the athletic team, but also in our chapel services, in the classroom, that their value is not the sport.
Yeah.
That's a piece of it, right? That's a piece of the talents God has given them, the gifts that God has given them, and they need to use that for their full potential. But it is not who they are. Their value is in Christ, and so really trying to ingrain that in them in the hopefully 4 years that we have them. It's tough. It's tough, but from day one in freshman year, those are things that we really try to teach our students that, we want to win championships. Don't get me wrong. We do, because I think we're called to do everything in an excellent way.
Yeah.
And for a short window, competition, right, is right there for our students. And I think that same drive to win, I think that same drive can be used in how we impact people for Christ later in life as well.
It's really good.
That is really good.
I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
And I think we'll end this part of this episode here. You'll have to come back for the second episode with Chip where we talk about his personal life. But one of the things Molly and I were talking about in prep for this conversation was we give helicopter parents and those parents who think their kids are going to be professional athletes a hard time.
Yeah.
I also think, I think about my own boys. Like, they were playing soccer in a rec league, and a ref came up and is like, "Listen, your kid can't keep scoring 10 goals. You need to put them in a travel team." And so some people who don't know my kids or me would say, "Oh, you think your kid's going to be a pro because they're on a travel team." Reality is, it's like, no, I want to push them. I want them to become better. And I think sometimes we forget that sports actually make us better human beings, and I think better adults after college. So talk about what do you see the benefit of sports being for students once they graduate from college and they're not living in the professional sports realm?
Yeah, and I'll talk about it from athletics, from a sports angle, but also really anything you can get involved in at a young age. Music, theater, arts, whatever it might be. But from an athletics side, I really think just the discipline that you have, the teamwork that you receive in there. I think the routines, just the mindset, right, of accomplishing something. But I think when you work for something and you see an end result where it might not be exactly what you wanted,
right,
but you see gains, I think that really opens your eyes to man, that hard work has paid off, right? And I think that's true with anything, but also I think just from a confidence perspective, I think you can gain a lot of confidence in who you are, who you're called to be through whatever activity you're involved in. But I think that's a great thought, because that's something we even at the college level, we see that sometimes. And but I'll say this too, we just had a recent alum back who owns his own business. And he was talking to our student athletes. This was back in May, right at the end of the school year. But he was saying that, when he looks to hire students, he looks to see if they played sports in college or high school, or because he knows that there is a little bit of a drive that he should expect with someone who was involved in athletics. Yeah. So it's kind of a neat sidebar there. Yeah.
How has this been true for you? Because you're not just an athletic director. You played college basketball. I did. At MVNU. Yep. You have to remind me, because my roommate, Matt Hilbert, sent me before I got deployed a piece of the net from the NAIA championship. So you were part of a championship team, right?
Yeah. So 2002.
He's not just a nobody. No. This guy's the man, I'm telling you. But for you personally, how have you experienced the benefits of heading into your professional life after sports?
Yeah, well, I'll say this too. I was a point guard for MVNU from 2000 to 2004. I was definitely a role player. I was not a star by any means. But again, I think just that my talents were limited. I played with guys who were way more talented than me. But I think I think just my attitude, my hard work really allowed me to get on the court sometimes.
Good.
And I think I reached my full potential. And again, it wasn't near what other people's ceilings were, but I'll never forget after my sophomore year, that was 2002, I was kind of looking at what are my options, right? I wasn't looking to transfer, but I was looking at maybe I could get involved in some other things on campus. I was an education major, and maybe I could get involved in some other things. And, but I had some opportunities during that national tournament run to get some really significant minutes my sophomore year. And I remember we won the championship. We were cutting the net down, and I remember walking back to the line where our teammates were lined up, and our head coach Scott Fleming, who's an amazing man, doing some great work in India right now with the NBA.
Right.
But I remember he looked at me and gave me a big hug. He said, "Hey, Chip, you were a huge part of this." And I told him just a few years ago, 20 years later, what that meant to me. It was a few simple words that gave me value. It wasn't, the playing time was great. Don't get me wrong. It was great to be out there, but I think just, man, wow. Well, he saw that in me, right? He saw something special. And he said, I just remember that. He said, "Chip, you were a huge part of this." And so again, I just think even the simple words as parents, as coaches, as teachers, you just never know what that kind word will mean to someone.
Yeah.
But that was really meaningful to me.
Man, that's a great spot to end.
I know, that really is. But we got to do hope or nope.
Let's do it.
So,
let's do it.
We always end every episode with hope or nope. So we just have a couple ones for you, and you can answer them too. It's okay.
No, I'm good.
Okay. The first one is, what is your favorite summer Olympic sport to watch?
Oh, well, I'm a little biased towards track and field.
Okay.
So I love track, but swimming's a close second. My wife was a swimmer.
Oh, cool.
And so she loves it. So so track and swimming. Yeah.
I don't know what it is about like swimming. I never care about it until the Olympics. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this sport. Okay. So when you work out, do you listen to a podcast or are you listening to music?
I'm listening to music.
Okay.
On my walks with my dog, I'll throw on a podcast.
Okay.
But listen to music. Yeah. Yeah.
And then cardio versus weight training. Where do you fall?
So I do mix. I do mix both, but more strength and like maybe 70-30, maybe.
Okay.
At one time when I was coaching cross country and track, it was probably like 90-10.
Oh yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. And then the last one is, what are your thoughts on a spicy chicken sandwich from Wendy's?
Oh my gosh! Absolutely not. No.
You have some bad experience with that, Chip?
Bad experience. Brad can tell you about that. But,
okay.
That might bring up a bad memory back in college. So, but
it's a nope.
Yeah. It's a nope for both of you guys.
It's a nope.
Fair enough. But hey, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure that you like and subscribe and share with everyone in your sphere of influence. And we will see you back here on the next episode.